So now let's start our discussion on pillar 3, which is the data. So we're going to look at the data here. This data, as you will see, is essentially the lifeblood of our digital experience. See, everything else that we have talked about can all be replicated in any organization without actually doing anything with software and devices. We have talked about software and devices and how they pertain to things like our stakeholders and the different phases and layers of the company. But any company, even in a non-digital world, still needs stakeholders and still has different processes and layers and phases to move the stakeholders and things through the organization. So this is really where we start to add in the digital component to the experience we're looking to generate. And so with this, now we will have a digital experience for our organization. So in this section, we're going to talk about a handful of things. There's quite a bit to cover, but we won't go super in depth into all of them. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the software. And as we've talked about, this is one of our data facilitators. This is what allows us to create that interface that users can use to interact with the data, make changes to the data, and facilitate processes. We'll get more in depth on devices, and as we've already talked about, devices are like our gatekeepers. It's a way that we can mitigate users and what they have access to within our organization and our digital experience. Then we'll move on to talk about security and backup. We want to make sure that we're protecting the data that we have and that we back it up, so if there is an issue, we can come back, get that data, and keep the company going. We'll talk about connections and the cloud. Essentially what we're going to talk about here is the way that data can communicate with other pieces of data, other software and systems, and then we'll talk about the cloud and what that means for data and software. And then the last thing that we'll talk about in this section are regulations and compliance. Not the funnest topic to talk about, but very tied into any company experience, and especially a digital world and a digital experience with various things like GDPR and other data regulations. So with that, let's go ahead and get started, and we'll start talking about software.